There we go.
Yeah, it's interesting. Hey,
That
can you
was
hear me
weird.
okay?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay, cool. Yeah. For some reason, it will only let me access it on my phone and not my desktop Instagram with my whole setup. So sorry for the inconvenience there.
Yeah, no problem. Just gotta pay the bills real quick. This episode and all episodes are brought to you by Line Energy. Make sure you guys check them out. I'm running the UT 1300 batteries for the trolling motor. Got me through all week. No problem. I don't even think I got them past 80%. It's crazy. They're really powerful, really good batteries. So make sure you guys check those out. And also check out ROKFORM. They're also a show sponsor. Been with me since day one. They make fantastic phone cases, iPad cases, mounts for your motorcycle, your RV, your boat, your motocross, BMX, you name it. They have all different types of quick attachments for all different purposes. So make sure you guys check them out, and also use code DMiller25. Save 25% off your order at rockform.com right now. All right, let's get into it. I'm happy to have Thomas Arens. Did I pronounce it right?
Yep, you did.
Arens on the podcast. I met Thomas on the Basscast live podcast. Had a great discussion. We were talking about FFS and some other stuff. But I really want to get Thomas on because he was on the same wavelength as me. You know what? Not for nothing. I think this is the first episode that I'm wearing my jersey. I just noticed that. So yeah, shout out everybody on here. But no, we're on the same wavelength when it discussing, chemical treatments on our fisheries, and we got into a good discussion, and he brought up some stuff on his Instagram as well, where he was talking about it with the different fisheries and talking to marine biologists. I was like, you know what, this would be fantastic because Thomas, I'm not gonna BS. For past several years, I kind of gave up in Connecticut, my home state, because I don't care what politician or whoever bureaucrat that I didn't elect gets ticked off at me and I think I don't have to worry about my sponsors because I think everybody across the globe can agree pouring dangerous chemicals into fisheries is not good. Mm-hmm. It's disgusting. It's how they get away with allowing this, and especially in my state where it's just rubber stamp approval. There's no discretion whatsoever. Well, no discretion whatsoever by the powers that be. But I figured we could talk about that a little bit. Talk about some other stuff. Did you end up making it to weigh in today or yesterday?
Sadly, I didn't. I was on vacation with the in-laws, so we were down at Chesapeake Bay, and I was and this was something we talked about with baits to show off. I was catching saltwater fish, and it's crazy in the bass zeitgeist. Fishing can just be fun, and it was a blast to actually target some things that I didn't worry about how many I needed to have in my live well, whether it was 15 inches, the weight. Just to go out and smoke some redfish and flounder was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. You cook any?
Flounder, yes. Dude, I'm telling you, stuffed flounder with crab meat is banging. It's really hard to get better than that.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I come down here, there's a restaurant in Pope's Creek called Captain Billy's. Shout out Captain Billy's. This isn't a paid advertisement. I'm definitely paying them. But I go there every time I come to the Potomac. I make a trip down there for crab cakes. Fantastic. I love seafood down here. It's amazing. So yeah, you got some flounder, some stuffed flounder. That's good.
It was an absolute blast. And then honestly, I know you're probably going to be talking about this on your show and throughout with your social media, but how did you feel like in general the Potomac fish just as a whole?
For me, it was on fire, but it wasn't big bites.
Yeah.
Just couldn't get big bites. It was it wasn't discouraging. I had in practice, I ran a lot of stuff and I eliminated a lot of water, and I narrowed it down a couple areas in 2 creeks. Mm-hmm. And then obviously hit some stuff in Mattawoman. Everybody does on their way back. Um, but and it was blowing a little bit. It was rough. I ran south. It was blowing. Definitely both days got beat up a little bit on the way back. But fishing overall was great. Every time I come to the Potomac, I've done good. I think I came in 17th yesterday and 11th today, and I missed 10th by like an ounce, I believe. Somebody told me it was an ounce. I didn't even see the final results yet, but I think I have like 9 top 20s down here or something crazy like that, and they're all like one fish away, one good call, and I'm there. It's I love coming down here between the Potomac and the Bay. Either fishery is fantastic. I did skunk one tournament in the Bay. I'm not gonna sit here and talk otherwise, but overall, every time I come down to Maryland, I don't know. I love tidal fishing. I love just power fishing. It's right up my alley.
And it has to do with the grass. Just to bring it all back, it's this fishery in the Upper Bay is better when you have this lush SAV. And a lot of people run south, and the real big reason for that, among other things, to keep it simplistic, is the grass beds. When you go up past Mattawoman, really Pohick might be as far north as I would say. Like, you consistently get grass. I know the comment section like, oh, I found some grass in DC. It's like, yeah, there you will find some, but it's not as lush and as plentiful as it is when you go down south.
Yeah, I tried to do something crazy too. I ran in Doug Creek. I don't even know if I pronounced it right. Doug Creek.
Doug.
Yeah, I don't know if there's. I've never really been in there before. Me and the missus got stuck in there in a storm one time, and we ended up driving back. Like, it was really bad weather, and I didn't really get to fish it. And then I was like, you know what? I always want to fish this creek. I never really go in there. So I went in there this week in practice, and there wasn't a strand of grass in there, and I wanted to try maybe off the beaten path, go for some hard stuff, and nothing. It was desolate. So I know like Pole Monkey has some grass out in front. I never went back in there, and even like Piscataway, the years I've tried going in there, the northern creeks just never really paid off. I've caught fish, but it was like, I'm not going to go there, and it didn't impress me enough in practice. They kind of like just eliminate it right off the rip. If I can't get a couple good bites, like back to back, in like a couple area, you definitely have to have more than one area, because I've talked to guys over the years, and they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to start the day in Aquai, and then they're going to go to DC, and it's like, what? Like, you're wasting so much time. I can't do that. I gotta like have little milk runs, and even in like the Occoquan, going like way back there, I don't know what the deal was. There was like one year I went back there, and it was like really good grass, and I was flipping, and the next year, like 2 years later, I went back there to check it out. It was like same time of year, and it was like desolate. There was no grass, so it's kind of weird. And then somebody was telling me in Nabesco, they nuked that. They put the pellets out around the
Probably. Like,
yeah.
If they did that, it might be because of the water treatment facility, I'm assuming, because generally speaking, you're not allowed to nuke SAV on tidal. So this is something to go down a rabbit hole. So it's like a lot of grasses are protected because it's part of an estuary for the Chesapeake Bay, which is very interesting, because if you can have a lake that feeds the Potomac, you can nuke that without a problem. You can you can dump Chernobyl stuff in there. No one cares. But as soon as it becomes part of the Chesapeake Bay and saving the Chesapeake, they get kind of they get irritated if you start putting too many herbicides into it. And really, historically, long story short, when the Woodrow Wilson Bridge started to have a lot of construction and they started to really dig up around DC, that's really when you started to see the grass kill, and it just started to come straight down. And honestly, if you took a map and just filled in with a green crayon, like the places that have lush grass and the places that don't, you can see that it really is like, as you go farther down from DC, the grass gets thicker. And so there's something about whatever happened up there 5, 6, 7 years ago, it's just trickling down.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that too, because you watched I think it was 2016, Bassmaster Elite
Jason
Series.
Christie.
No, Justin Lucas, I think.
Yeah, Lucas won up at DC. Christie caught a 30-pound sack day 2 out of Piscataway throwing a frog. And that was like one of the few times I saw like beautiful mats in the back of Piscataway was way back then. But yeah, Justin Lucas, the dock up in DC.
Yeah, that's the discharge, I think, for sewer treatment or WPCA or whatever they call it down here. I don't know.
Yeah, the locals call that spot the Blue Plains. Blue
Plains, okay. Yeah, even like not for nothing, Greenway Flats like last year was desolate.
Yeah.
Or if it wasn't last year, it was the year before. And this year it was like really nice. Like it was really good grass on Greenway Flat, but there was no fish. So if somebody caught them there, more power to them. Because I spent like probably 5 hours there and hit it 4 different tides, not a sniff. So, and I don't know. There's this other grass too. It's like a star grass with the little white stars on it. I don't know what that grass is called. It's not hydrilla. It's not milfoil. It's some like random grass. That stuff. It seems to be. You know what's funny? Because Oneida's like this, where there's multiple different types of grass all mixed together. Like as long as it's not like just one grass, they like it when there's like multiple grasses all mixed together. It's like a little bit of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could find that combination, you'll do good and that's the Potomac and the Chesapeake Bay, not just the Potomac, this whole area down here.
Yeah, and that's grass fishing 101. I think if you go to Florida, it's the same thing. Anywhere you find the mix of vegetation, that's where you're going to have success. And then, of course, that's like the perfect world. And then if your lake has any type of grass in it, it'll fish better, like hands down. And I think there's the thing of looking at the environment and the ecological ecosystem of, is grass important for the environment? And I think what we need to get with the zeitgeist is, yes, it is. Because I feel like the Overton window is anglers saying we want grass and the rest of the world saying kill it because my patio looks terrible. I think the conversation needs to be eventually like, well, we all agree that some type of grass in a body of water is good for it. It makes the water clean. It makes it, what you want to see in like a Hallmark card where it's that crystal clear color when you go out there. But we can't get there yet. And I feel like if we just get to that part first, these conversations we have with dock owners, wake boaters, and just the general public would be way easier to get to come kind of solution.
Yeah. Sup, Reese? Thank you, brother. You too, man. Reese just chimed in, said nice work today. He did really good himself. I believe it was Santee Cooper. So, sorry for the interruption.
That's a beautiful place too. I mean, yeah, it's because I know your plight, and I'm going to have you on my show, and we're going to do a long form about what's happened up there at your places, because that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a disconnect. Like, these people aren't educated on like what nature is supposed to look like, and it's not a swimming pool.
Yeah, exactly. See, I was talking to somebody when we did the podcast. Somebody saw me talking about it from back home, and I was not sure what he was talking about with the man, I'm drunk. I should have took notes for this. I've been fishing all week. There's something along the lines of invasive species, right? Like down here, snakehead's an invasive species. But the milfoil, they refer to milfoil as an invasive species in the sense of it spreads fast, so it becomes invasive. Not that it's an invasive species, being that it's here and it's not supposed to be here. People this is like a Connecticut thing. The people that advocate for the chemicals, they're like, well, it's an invasive species, and it spreads like wildfire. Like, well, you're looking at, like, that's not what an invasive species is. An invasive species is something that's a goby is an invasive species on the St. Lawrence River, and smallmouth love goby. Like they could populate tenfold. It wouldn't matter because they're protein shakes for smallmouth. Milfoil is not. It can't be looked at like that. Then you have the unelected bureaucrats that are like that push that messaging. They're like, oh, it spreads so fast, like, and then there was like they were talking about the what's the other one, the water chestnut, because they're like you can't just like mow water chestnut. You can't do physical removal because you have to get the root or it'll spread like wildfire, and the little seeds are like little acorns or something. I'm like, okay, an invasive species is something that is introduced to an environment that is not originally from. That's like the textbook definition. If I'm wrong, smack me.
Well, I have the definition up right here. So basically, because I have to argue about this on the internet all the time. So a non-native refers to simply as a species that doesn't originate from there. An invasive refers to a subset of non-native species that causes harm and disrupts the environment. Basically, it is how you envision it. If you think a largemouth bass disrupts your lake, you can call it an invasive species because the largemouth actually doesn't exist in a lot of the areas it's at. That could be considered invasive if you want. It's all perception is reality pretty much to this thing. So if you go out west, the brook trout is considered an invasive species because it disrupts the environment. The non-native factor there, it's such a weird lawyer word salad crap, which is what I get annoyed with. It's like when you have these lakes where it's like, for your safety, because it's drinking water, you can't put an outboard there because, you know, we don't know in 2025 how to filter out any kind of oil that gets in the water. It's just beyond our capability in this thing. So, you know, the astronaut can recycle his suit. We can figure that out, but this, for your safety, you can't. And it's like, no, that's a cop-out answer. It's because you don't want wake boats on the lake, but you don't have the guts to just tell the wake boats that they can't go to the electric motor only lake. So you put in these weird words for your safety, for your health. And that's what they've done with grasses. And
what was the first? I'm sorry. What was the first definition? The first before invasive species is a
non-native. So a goby, a largemouth bass, hydrilla in some ecosystems, it's non-native. It doesn't originate from there, but it's not necessarily hurtful to the environment.
So that's the thing too. We could, you know, because milfoil doesn't. You look at these fisheries. Milfoil, I completely cut you off, man. I'm sorry, but it was I didn't want to screw this up. Like milfoil itself. If you look at a lake when it's choked out in Connecticut, because it's never like choked out like that, pre-spraying, it's perfectly fine. Like it's not to the point where it's like, damn, there's a lot of grass here. You know what I mean? Like, there's never a time ever in any fishery in Connecticut where I've been like, there's too much grass. It's like you can't even get through it. You got to plow through it. Like, where you can't. Yeah. You can, if you can get through it on a trolling motor, no problem, and not have to clean stuff off it. You never see it really matte. Then it's not that big of a problem. So that in itself, just calling it non-native, when people refer to it as invasive species, like no, it's non-native. Like change
change the definition, and we need to get more literature. And this is one thing I've had an issue with the scientists and the people that I've had conversations with, is most of the studies are based out of Florida, because Florida is like the home for where all these studies are conducted. And I feel like, okay, a study you do on Lake Toho that's 4 feet deep and it's in a tropical environment 12 months out of the year, that doesn't count for Lake Cayuga in upstate New York. That's 2 different bodies of water, and I don't think those tests necessarily should work. And the hot thing now is like Gunnersville. You know, what's going on at Lake Gunnersville with the eelgrass and how that came in there. And it's just fascinating where I don't think we have all the information on why did the eelgrass, if you want to believe them, let's just go with this here. If you want to believe them that the eelgrass exploded out of nowhere, why did it all of a sudden become an issue? And I think part of it has to do with the development around the lake. I think Lake Gunnersville has gotten more developed in the last 4 or 5 years. There are people that are watering their new lawns. There's a lot of stuff being run off into the lake. It's just weird that Lake Gunnersville, and you guys listen in the comments, you probably know way more about this than me if you live down there. There's always been grass at Gunnersville, but now it's gotten crazy. So something changed in the water to make it get that crazy. And I don't think it's just the grass is evil. I think it also has to do with these developers that are greedy as heck, and they put so many houses on these lakes, and they don't think of the side effects of what runoff will do to the body of water.
Yeah, and that's another issue with like Candlewood too. that it's the you have areas where they'll like people buy like 5 lake houses, knock them down, and then build a mansion. You have sections of the lake like that, and where they get like they consolidate the properties,
Yeah.
different till you have like one big lot. Consolidate the lots, I think is the proper terminology. But then you also, when you build all these houses, you run out of fishing access. So people will be like, oh, there's 100 acres of shoreline that people can fish from. Yeah, steep bank, this 300-foot cliff. Like, you can't access it. There's no access. So they look at the land, the shoreline that's not developed and be like, yeah, kids, everybody has a place to fish. Like, because not for nothing, fishing access. I want fishing access for everybody. Even saltwater in Connecticut, it's like there's nowhere to go. Like every beach, it's like they ban surf fishing. It's ridiculous. So you can't even, unless you have a boat,
Yeah.
pretty soon you're not even going to be able to fish. Period.
Yeah.
And so you got kids like I grew up. I don't know what people's perspectives are, but when I was a kid, when I was like 5 or 6, and my mom would take me fishing, or my dad would take me fishing, that was like the best thing in the world. Like to go, like sit on a bucket, surf fish or fish from shore at a pond or brook or whatever. Kids can't do that now.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that issue as well with the development on the lakes. You lose access. And then in Candlewood too, the other issue is like you have all these leaching fields and everything. The whole town, Brookfield, is on septic, so all that runs off. every septic tank that leaches out right into the lake, and then that whole area will get a ton of grass, and then they complain about it. It's like, well, fix the problem, and the grass won't be as bad as it is. Or
Yeah. And that's the one thing I think, and I really had this going up the road, listening to some fishing podcasts, which I had a nice drive back from the beach. And there's so many rivers on the schedule now for Major League Fishing, for Bassmasters, all this. And you think about it, they're the last bastions of just a healthy ecosystem like that are left. When you're talking about, for better or worse, you have the Sabine, the Mississippi River that you're going to have on the schedule. Potomac River's on the schedule. There's a place in the Carolinas that's on the schedule. A lot of river systems. And part of it is you have a system like the River Keepers organization that go to bat with lawyers to sue if anything happens to the water. I see it on the Shenandoah. The Upper Potomac has river keepers. The Potomac River has a river keeper situation. And their thing is to combat environmental issues. If you're a homeowner on the Shenandoah and you build a boat ramp, you're going to get sued by them because you're not allowed to do that without permitting. If you try to dump chemicals, a lot of lakes don't have that kind of, and we talked about this before, like an NRA to go to bat. You have the TVA that runs all those lakes, and then people have thoughts on either side of the fence on them. And you have the Army Corps of Engineers, who I still am a little gray on what happened up in Pennsylvania this year, where it's kind of like they outlawed fishing tournaments, but they didn't. They just said you can't be at a boat ramp at certain times, which is word salad again for like you're kind of outlawing it. So we really need, whether it's Bassmaster that would like to, do this, or Major League Fishing, or someone, an organization that will go look at these lakes and like, hey, this is probably not good for the environment, and we need to think about that. Because my last thought on this is, everyone likes to say it's anglers versus homeowners, but I feel like anglers, like hunters, we do care about the woods and the rivers and the lakes, and what we kind of want is kind of more closer to homeostasis of the ecosystem than I feel like a lot of homeowners do when they buy that $2 billion house and they gut that part of the lake to put it in there.
Yeah. It's sorry. No, it's a multifaceted issue for sure.
It is.
The I think we need to create like a council at some point. Like we need to work with in a lot of different anglers, a lot of different people, because there's a lot of stakeholders involved, and try to come up with a game plan of what way to pursue this. Because there's other aspects for outdoorsmen, whether it's hunting, shooting, or whatever, that the minute something happens, the lawsuit printers go burr. And
Mm-hmm.
we need that on our end for fisheries, because there's no reason why it can't happen. We need like a group of people to like co-sign this and have attorneys on retainer to just, that's what it's going to come to. It's going to be like, oh, spray weeds on this lake, lawsuit.
Yeah.
Like single every single weed application nationwide on all these fisheries, because it's out of control, and a lot of it is self-inflicted by the states.
Mm-hmm. And if with anything,
This past week, I get an email. I don't know how they found. I'm not gonna name the person, but a party of the Lake Association for Bantam Lake, a lake in which I guide on. Fantastic fishery, but they sent a email out requesting donations for spraying, essentially. And I'm like, okay, let me talk to this person. So I sent a nice email like, hey, look, I'm an angler. I know Bantam very well. This is the last thing on my priority list in life, as far as trying to go to bat or fight for it right now. I have way too many things on my plate, but I'd love to have a talk with you. Person called me, gave them my side of the story, and they're like, wow, never knew any of this. And come to find out, the company that they hired, she's like, oh, we have a team of scientists, and they know biology for fisheries and lake management, yada yada, and they did water testing, different studies, and no, I was like, no, what they do is they send a guy out that gets paid $10 an hour to go drive up and down the lake with a bunch of 5-gallon drums or 50-gallon drums of chemical, and then just spray it
mm-hmm.
off the side of the boat, go back and forth, and it's chemical that if I expose your dog to it, it's going to die. If I expose your kids to it, they're probably going to get cancer. That's what you're putting in the lake. Like, it's terrible. And it's the same company that I've had it out with, that other people have called out on, even homeowners on certain lakes that know what's up and are against the spraying, because not everybody that owns a lake house is evil by any means. There's a lot of people. There's people I know personally that buy a house on a lake specifically so they can retire and go fishing. And that's what they want to do. That's their lake. That's their favorite lake or pond or whatever, or river, and they'll buy a house right on it just so they could have a dock with their bass boat right there. There's stakeholders on our side too that own lake houses. So in this case, I educated somebody, and she was like, invited me to join one of their meetings. I'm like, maybe. Let me look at my schedule, send me the dates. Because if you end up speaking to a lot of people from these meetings, they're just in one ear, out the other. It's our way or no way, and this is what we want to do. And
Yeah.
the perception is really one-sided because they hear from this company, this elaborate company. I'm like, look, the company it's like anything. If they had a cure for your problem, they would be out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
Period. the real solution is, you don't want weeds around your dock, you put mats out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that. You own a lake house, more power to you. You want to stop weeds from growing around your dock, put mats out. Doesn't mean you get to spray the whole shoreline for hundreds of acres because you didn't want weeds growing around your dock.
Yeah, and that's there's a couple of points that we can break down, which is, the first off is, if you are near a body of water, you live on a lake, you gotta go to the meetings. Like, I'm on the board for Maryland for Black Bass Advisor Association. I've been in different rooms, different people. There are people in some of these meetings that they don't fish. They're just a part of it, and they get to make decisions on a lot of these things. And if that's at this level that I'm at, imagine what your HOA is like around your lake. Her name is Karen, and she sits there on her dock. She's never fished before, and she's dictating the policy. Why? Because you don't show up. And that's the thing with all you anglers. It's one thing to complain, and I'm not against getting organized that way. But if you really want to make a difference, you have to find time to go to these meetings and actually have a say. Because when these people write these letters to their congressmen, they're organized enough to have the HOA meetings, to get everyone there, to then sign the letter, to go to the state to have things done. And what the congressman sees is 10 to 15 names on a letter that says, we want to spray the lake. Fishermen, God love us, we don't do that. We're not that organized. The forward-facing sonar thing is the most organized crap we've ever done in the last 10 years, is complaining about that.
We need to put that energy into what really matters. Like, or pretty soon we're not going to have anywhere to fish. Like, that's what it's getting down to. There's lakes. I fished so many lakes over the years and different river systems and everything. And it's to the point where the spraying is really at an all-time high. Like, I've never seen it like this. Like, where it's like everything is getting sprayed. And if you look at the weights that all the fisheries, dude, I won a tournament on Lake Leonona with 5 pounds, 28 boats. It was like 5.56 or something like that. It was 5.56 because it was the caliber of the rifle. I'll never forget that. The 5.56 won a tournament because that's how much they sprayed the lake. It's come back a little bit because all the fighting I did, there was a couple of years they didn't spray it. And even when I did that with the petition, it was like pulling teeth getting bass anglers to sign a petition. Like,
it's frustrating because there are different ways. Like you said, you could put mats out. You can drop the water level at certain times of the year to cut it back. And the other thing is, like, these lakes are overdeveloped. I think one thing, the last episode of the show I talked to the Army Corps of Engineers for Kerr, and we talked about the history of that lake. And the way Kerr Bugs Island is zoned, the lake can never become like Lake Norman. Like, every other creek is zoned wildlife, so it can't be built on Bugs Island, which I didn't know about. And it's like, that's what you kind of need, is cut the lake in whatever, like on a map, and say, like, okay, this creek here can't get developed. It's allowed to have grass in it. Okay, this creek here can have houses. You can do what you want. And I think, sadly, because I don't live in a kumbaya world, like, we're going to have to do something like that with some of these lakes. Like, this here has to stay for wildlife, and then this part here, you can do what you want with it, because there's so much money to be made with houses and building lakes, because lake properties can get so blindingly expensive. Look at Smith Mountain Lake now, down near me. Some like houses, like you said, that are $1 billion. Like, it's not unreasonable to think we're going to lose so much fishing access because these are going to become closed gated communities with how much money are being poured into these bodies of water.
The other issue too we have in Connecticut that nobody talks about is an astronomical. This is with Candlewood. There's an astronomical amount of people who go to Candlewood that aren't even Connecticut residents. Like, more power. Like, obviously, I'm cool with it, with fishing and travel and everything else. But it's like, I would like to see a study, like, what is the actual number of people that are from out of state. I mean, this isn't just fishermen. This is pleasure boaters, people vacationing. It's right on the New York border. It's right as soon as you go through Danbury, you're in New York. So you have a lot of people that just come over, like, hey, I'm going to go to the lake this weekend. And they come to Candlewood. Where was I getting with this? I think
it's the same thing with the Potomac. Like, when you have New Jersey, Pennsylvania, maybe I don't think it's Delaware, that have weird limits on when you're allowed to have a bass tournament. What happens? Everyone comes to the Potomac to start the season. And then Maryland's like, what are we supposed to do with all these out-of-staters? And that's how you make a domino effect of laws and stuff, where if you are a New Jersey resident, let's say, you got to understand, whatever laws you put on the books, eventually the other states will do it to you back. Like, if 3 states in a row say you can't bass fish a tournament from April and May, well, then they're going to go to Kentucky or Tennessee, whatever border state, and they're going to fish there. And then Kentucky, Tennessee are going to be like, oh, hell no, you're not doing this. And it'll be a domino effect that you're going to start seeing here in the next couple of years, I think.
It's just a whole situation that needs to be looked at, like, seriously, with nationwide. Not just, I'm just using it, Candlewood as an example for the transient boaters or jet skiers or whatever you have.
Mm-hmm.
But that's interesting point too with the tournaments, because in Candlewood we have I think almost all the tournaments in the spring are like out of like club tournaments from out of state.
Yeah, like, and it stinks because it's, again, it's this weird disconnect where you make a law and you don't understand the ripple effect of what that actually does. It's the same thing I've talked about with Major League Fishing and their thing. Like, there's a lot of states that would love to implement catch, weigh, release, or catch, measure, release tournaments, because so many people complain about tournament pressure. And so, again, you complain, it doesn't mean the government fixes it correctly. And so they're like, okay, cool, no problem. Tournaments are now illegal. Congratulations. And so they'll go catch, photo, release. Pennsylvania is really trying to dabble with that. Maryland has thought about it in the past. They haven't acted on it at all, but more states in the halls of power are talking about this. And it's because you get these people that are not able to come together and communicate what actually needs to happen. And I hear this all the time with the Potomac River right now. People are like, oh, there's too many tournaments. And to go off a small tangent here, it's because everybody here is like a wife that always got Starbucks, and then you tell them one day a week they can't do Starbucks, and they complain. And if you tell a tournament organizer here, instead of having all 9 or 15 of your tournaments on the Potomac, go to other lake, and they're like, well, it's not big enough. And it's like, okay, well, for one event, it should be okay. And if everybody just took one event somewhere else, it would decrease the pressure. But everyone in their mind believes it has to be a 200,000 acre body of water with, Taylor Swift style parking. And dude, I've had people from Ohio and Michigan on our show. They do BFLs out of Indian Lake, which is basically a pond, and they'll have 200 boats. Does it stink? Yes. Can it be done? It can. And if we took advantage of some of these smaller bodies of water, it would alleviate pressure. And I'm not saying all of your tournaments have to be there, but even if it's just 1 or 2, it helps mitigate how these places get beat up.
That's interesting too, because I was talking to the tournament director for the BFLs last year about this. I was like, attendance or participation is down, but all I hear guys complain about from New England is like, well, it's not a real Northeast trail. And it makes sense because you have all these fisheries up here. You got Winnie, you got Sebago, you got Connecticut River, you got Candlefish, you got what's the other one? Cabasacati, Hudson River. Like, you never have tournaments on any of these fisheries. Like, you could have a real Northeast trail and never go farther south than Massachusetts and have 5 tournaments on 5 different bodies of water.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with like the coasts. Is when they got rid of the West Coast division, you could have had a Mid-Atlantic BFL thing easily. You could have done Smith Mountain Lake, Kerr, the Potomac River, the James, Bugs Island. You could go up to the Upper Bay. Like, you could slot a true Mid-Atlantic coastal division. Instead, you have the Potomac River, and then the rest of them are at the border of Canada. Like, that's a lot of commuting compared to if you live in like South Carolina, Alabama area. Like, that's pretty centrally located. But for the Mid-Atlantic where I am at, there's no place really you're going to have a lot of events besides maybe the James and definitely the Potomac for one event a year.
Yeah.
And it's just cause like when I ask people this, like, why do they keep going to Bugs Island 78 times in a row? Because they've always done it. Like Gaston, which is below Bugs Island. Okay, is the boat ramp perfect? No, it is not. Is the lake big enough? Yeah, it's plenty big enough. It's over, I think it's 18,000 acres. It's bigger than High Rock. It would work for one. A couple lakes near you. Are the boat ramps perfect? And this is the thing, is like, it's always the boat ramp. It's like, how much of it is, again, the wife that has always had Starbucks, and it's like, yes, but come on, like, it doesn't have that nice handrail. I can't do that. I think it could. I've gone to High Rock before where you just drop your boat right off on the ground. Like, there's no place to park. If that's okay at High Rock, why can't, again, I don't know. I feel like maybe we're just unwilling to try new bodies of water, which is a shame, because I think that's something that would really be cool to try all these other lakes that are in the area that are in that like mid-range.
So, like, something interesting, Candlewood, back in 2000, early 2000s, we used to have like 100 boat tournaments, and there's plenty of parking at Squance. The more recently, it's like, oh, we're going to limit you to 40 boats, but only 20 can launch as squats. The rest have to launch at Latins. But then Latins, you can't start your big motor until 8 o'clock. So they do this like word salad, like you were mentioning before, with like how we can run a tournament. It doesn't make any sense. Like, how about you could fit 100, we've had over 100 boats out of squats before. We could do it again. Like, but you're going to limit us to like 40 boats now. But then, meanwhile, there's like 5 other tournaments. And another thing about tournament pressure, I want to say my 2 cents, because I don't know if I've ever said this on the podcast, or I don't know if anybody knows. But I don't think there's too many divisions or too many regionals. Maybe there's too many insignificant tournaments like that are like one-offs or something, or like little trails. Like I like if you're in a club tournament, I don't even think you should have to get a permit. Like Ticonderoga, the Champlain. Hold on a second.
No, that's a good point there.
Ticonderoga, if you got a tournament under 10 boats, you don't need a permit. So if you have a small club, why does that even matter? Like, it's 10 guys going fishing.
So,
who cares?
I get some insider baseball on that. That's, at least for Maryland, it's only if you have a weigh-in. So if I have a kayak tournament or I have a boat tournament, which is catch, weigh, release, I don't need a permit.
Okay. Yeah, but the kayak guys launch like wherever they want, right? Like one guy can launch here, one guy can launch there. It's the same fishery.
So you see like the loophole there. So it's them almost incentivizing to go to those formats. And it's a very subtle thing. And it sucks. If we can't fight it, I think that's what's going to end up happening is you're going to have more catch, weigh, release tournament formats, because then you could go to any lake and pile on. Who cares? Because there is no weigh-in. You guys all meet at the gas station, grab your scales, get everything certified, and go out. I'm part of Antietam Bassmasters. We are a Bass Federation club, and we're catch, weigh, release with a co-angler. We both have to sign each other's little chart for every fish we catch. Because of that, we don't have to really get any waiver forms for any tournament we have, because we can go anywhere we want and fish a tournament. And it was weird to get used to the format, but what's cool is we can go to Raystown when tournaments are illegal because we're not putting anything in our live well. And again, this is why I think MLF, Major League Fishing is weird. Great ideas, not always well executed. That thing of catch, weigh, release, I don't think is going anywhere. It's just going to take somebody to run with it because it opens up Candlewood and so many other places. You can have a 100-boat tournament because, hey, we're not going to congest one specific boat ramp.
Yeah. But to continue on with my concept with the pressure, to get back to that one, was the how many divisions of the Toyotas are there? 4?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because there was 5 with West, and they got rid of the West.
So 4. So there should be, my opinion, 8 divisions for BFLs. Less, like, reduce the number of tournaments. Like, if you're only getting, like, here in the Potomac, what's the one down here, Shenandoah?
You got the Shenandoah and you got the Piedmont that kind of intersect.
You have two or three divisions that all fish the same lake. That doesn't make sense. Like, these lakes should be in this division. These lakes should be in this division. Like, reduce the number of divisions, have less overlapping. You'll get more participation per event because of the way they're spaced out. And if that's the only game in town, that's what they're going to fish. I don't know. I think there's not tournaments, but there's unnecessary tournaments.
It gets back to what you said earlier. Why is everyone? Some lakes, I get it because they're the rock star coliseums of fishing. But again, not to pick on Bugs Island, but I'll do it again. Why is every tournament there? Why is every tournament on the Potomac River? Rappahannock River, another really cool hidden gem in Virginia. The Delaware River, the Upper Bay doesn't get enough love nowadays. Like, there's cool places you could go and to separate out some of these BFLs instead of hitting the same place 78 times for 30 divisions. Again, I'm going to get killed in the comment section. I'm not saying the Potomac River is not a good place or the James. I'm just saying they get treated like a rented mule sometimes. And there are other really cool places you could it's 5,000 acres, but Deep Creek Lake fishes like Lake Champlain in Maryland. It's in Western Maryland. It's super high up in the mountains. It's about 5,000 to 6,000 acres. It has grass. It has smallmouth. It has largemouth. Amazing fishery. Unless you live there, you never heard of it. You got Lake Ches and yeah. And there's places up near you and you're rattling it off. I've never heard of these places, and they probably fish good. And you could sprinkle your BFL season around so you get to try other lakes and not one lake gets pressured.
Yeah. And that would, like, the people who don't tournament fish that complain about tournament pressure. Wait, did I say that right? The people who don't fish tournaments that fish all the time that are complaining about the tournaments causing fishing pressure on their lakes. That makes sense? It would alleviate their headache because they're like, oh, there's not a 1,000 boat tournament every weekend. Like this weekend, yesterday's, from what I heard, Doc talk, there's 6 tournaments yesterday on the Potomac.
Yep.
Lee Sylvania, out of Aquia, there was a club tournament and a kayak tournament. There's a tournament out of Lee Sylvania. There was a tournament out of Mattawoman, us. Then there was a second tournament out of Mattawoman that was like less than 20 boats. And then there was a tournament out of Marshall Hall. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it comes down to, and there's some organizations that they only fish the Potomac, it's fine. That's your thing. It's perfectly fine. But if you're an organization that tries to bounce around a little bit, it is like, again, Rappahannock River. It's there. There are some boat ramps that can handle a couple of boats. That place is absolutely on fire lately, catching smallmouth and largemouth. You have the York River. You have Lake Anna. Lake Anna's had almost a 200 boat tournament on it before. It can handle the boat pressure, no problem. Of course, we got Smith up near you. There's a ton of places like they're there, but it's not because they're not 100,000 acres. People don't want to go there, and I think that's the issue here is when you get so spoiled with the Upper Bay and the Potomac River and the James, it makes you not appreciate these other fisheries. Where if you didn't have those big ones, they'd be having massive tournaments on Lake Anna. They'd be having massive tournaments on some of these other bodies of water. So how do you convince people? And I want to convince people because getting government involved usually never works. It always makes it worse. And so if some of these people would be like, yeah, we're going to go one tournament here. I know people are going to complain, but just one tournament each, I do think that would help a little bit in alleviating some of the pressure.
Yeah. Do you think there's too many like insignificant tournaments? Not crap on anybody's because like even like while you were talking, I'm thinking like in Connecticut, right? I was in CBN, and then you got TBF. Then there's another thing, any Bassin. I don't even know if it's still around. I haven't paid attention, but I think it started off as like a club or a kayak tournament thing, then it went to boats or something. I don't know, or maybe it's both. Then you have all the clubs. You have all the random tournaments, like so like I don't know. It's just like there's so many tournaments. It's like wouldn't it make more sense to just like everybody go compete in like Bass Nation or
that's the problem is
one.
this is tough.
From like in my perspective, because I gave up on like fishing the local stuff a couple of years ago. This doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't provide anything. I set a goal for myself to see All American. This podcast, Road All American. That's what I'm pursuing, right? I'm doing the Toyotas too, because maybe the pursuit goes to a different level, or takes a different trajectory. But seeing like at the local level, it's like, well, you could fish this, you could fish that, you could like if you're in a Bass Nation in Connecticut, you could fish between a club. Let's say you're a real go-getter and you want to fish 2 clubs. That's 15 tournaments right there. Then 5 or 6 for Bass Nation. Now you're over 20 tournaments, and they're all on Candlewood. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, where does it get you? Like, what's the purpose?
And I guess if you are the perspective mentally, and just anyone that has this thought, because I've been asked this question once or twice, there's too tournaments. Okay, cool. Who are you eliminating? Who has the power you're giving to eliminate other organizations? Which organizations do you stay?
No, I'm not
And
saying
that is
like for people like to somebody to strike the mallet down a judge jury.
no, but I'm saying like the
I'm saying
problem is
us as anglers, like what, like is it really necessary to have like I don't know, like the club level is awesome because it also gets people into fishing.
I mean,
Um,
should you have that many tournaments? I don't know, because again, it kind of gets back to once you talk about that, the slippery slope is it always goes to if should you, and then if it shouldn't be that way, what do you do to fix it? And then that leads to all roads lead to one thing in that conversation, which is if you agree that there's too many tournaments, how do you get rid of the tournaments? And in that, it's almost like what's going on over in the Middle East. There's no way to touch that topic because let's say you do reduce the amount of tournaments. Well, then what's going to happen is the other tournaments are going to get more big. It's going to get massive. And then at some point, you're going to have to gatekeep. Like that's logically, that's how it's going to have to go down unless it's all the same people fishing a bunch of different clubs and tournaments. It could also be that as well. Clubs,
well, it can't be because like look at yesterday. You got 6-7 tournaments or whatever the number was.
So you got that many.
It's not the same guys fishing all the tournaments. It's all different people. Like my thing is us as anglers should be like have a discussion. I don't know. We need to start a forum or something, or hey guys, you think we should really have 5 different ways to get to the same goal? Like, is it why not just have one way? I'd rather see it like at the home lake. I'd rather see one tournament with 120, 130 boats than 7 tournaments or 20 boats apiece. Like, just have the one tournament and that's it. And then you guys come back for the next one a month later, 2 months later. Why have 6-7 tournaments every single weekend on the same fishery? That's just
and then it gets down to the body of water.
Let's
so
go
if you
fishing.
are down at Lake Gunnersville where you can fish 12 months out of the year, that place I think you got to manage a little bit differently than Lake Champlain where it's frozen for 8 months out of the year. The Potomac River specifically, like usually, again, comment section don't hold me to this, but tournaments really start about late March and probably are going to end about October, November. So you're talking about you're going to have 4 months of breather. So are you trying to manage it for the whole year or just a certain time frame that you probably should manage it? Probably that is what you could do. When it comes to all these groups like clubs are interesting because it's the same thing with forward-facing sonar with that conversation. I think a club can do whatever they want. If you join a club, it's not to get rich. It's to basically you have a group of guys, you want to scratch the itch, and that's it. It's bowling, perfectly fine. God bless you, go do that. When you get to the upper echelons, that's where I think you could start calling a little bit. Do we need 38 BFL leagues that cross over? Probably not. Do we need to have an NPFL, a Bassmaster, and there's 38 AAA leagues? Probably not. I think grassroots level, when you have a bunch of 20 boat organizations, that's not as big of an issue, I think, as when you have all the big organizations. Like when, like 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, you had Tactical Warehouse Series, you had Bassmaster Open, and then you had, I think, another one go to the James River the same year in a month. It was nuts. So it's like all the big league guys went to this place for a month and beat the heck out of it. That's got to stop. And I think that's something that's very doable because that's big sticks like yourself in a 3 to 4 day event plus practice. Completely different than the 20 boat, Fishers of Men kind of series going there for a Sunday. Why are we having that kind of overlap with everything? And I think part of it, they won't tell you this, is because of how expensive this stuff is in logistics. They have to have everyone go to the same place because all the people that run it are there.
Yeah.
Which is a problem that we need to talk about.
Yeah, but not from all the different organizations. Like, if you have, like, what was it? NPFL, were they there? No, the guys from the NPFL were there. But, no, I was there the week after Bassmasters for the Toyota. The place got pounded.
Yeah, why is that happening? Why do you have like a federation? Like in the spring, you had Mr. Bass, you had the Maryland and Pennsylvania there, and then you had the BFLs there. Everything was there at that higher tier. We're all there at the same time. That's that higher tier right there. That's the one that I'm more worried about than like the grassroots. This person has a kayak derby for his local club.
Yeah.
I don't think they're the ones that need to be. They're not the ones that could use maybe a little bit of reorging, but it's when you get to that federation, BFL, these bigger organizations that are nationally, they're the ones that you could easily talk to and say, like, we got to communicate about separating this out, because that would pull a lot of boats off a certain area at that time.
Huh. Got some takeaways, stuff to think about for a later podcast.
Because it's interesting, because like I know you got the Battle of the Border Series, you have the Potomac teams, they're always there. They always fish like 4 or 5 events every year. They've done that for 500 years. And they're always going to do that. There's nothing to do about that. And then you talk about like the local level, like, okay, this guy, because I cover this stuff all the time with our areas, and they have a Thursday night or a Wednesday nighter out of Aquia. It's 20 to 30 boats. I don't see that 20 boats being the issue, and I don't see a couple of 20 boat tournaments being as big as if you're gonna if you 100% believe this in the stats, a Toyota or a tackle warehouse moving 2,000 pounds of fish to Mattawoman. Clearly, that is going to have more of an impact if you're 100% with the science. Do I think one of those events hurts it? No. But in years past, when you have the tackle warehouse series, and then you'll have the Bass Federation come in the next week, and then you have another, and then you have 3 weeks in a row that's stacked like that, that doesn't make sense to me. Like, why did the big dogs have to stack so close together? Why couldn't they spread that out? Maybe there's a good reason for that, and I just am not aware of it.
Yeah, I can understand like having like you did the BFL and the Toyota like back to back weeks. Like they got the trailer or the stage there. Okay, that makes sense. Like that's no problem. Then you're gonna have more participation because guys that probably wouldn't have fished one will probably fish both. Because it's the following week. That's understandable to a point. But then to have like the different organizations all like hammer, that is ridiculous. Oh no. So fishing pressure. If you're just joining the podcast, we started off talking about invasive species, quote unquote, having to do with milfoil, hydrilla, stuff like that, different lake associations and whatnot, and homeowners nuking fisheries. Then we went off into fishing pressure, and that's what we're currently discussing. Yeah, I think there needs to be some discussions. It just doesn't make any sense to have so many tournaments back to back. The bigger tournaments, club tournaments shouldn't even be accounted for. Like you shouldn't even have a permit. It's 20 buddies going fishing.
Yeah, like, and again, like the permitting thing, like and how it's been brought up to me in meetings, it's just so they can document tournaments and how many tournaments they actually list out, so they have receipts for it as a state. So if this is ever an issue, they can say like, well, here's the list right here of everyone that's had a tournament. But again, the only loophole to that is it only counts if you have a weigh-in. Therefore, if you don't have a weigh-in, it's fine. So you can loop the rule there. So that I don't think from a legislative standpoint makes a whole lot of sense. And that's the same with the kayak thing. Is like a kayak tournament, that's catch, measure, release. So are we outlawing tournaments in general off a body of water if you could because of fishing pressure, or is it just if you catch and move them versus just catch it and you put it right back? Okay, then let's have that conversation. Like it's such a weird onion that you can keep peeling the layers to be like, what is and it's the same thing I'd ask like Major League Fishing. Why do you stack it? And I think they would say money. Everyone wants to go to the Potomac River, and we can just drop our gear there, like you said, 3 weeks in a row, and it saves us a ton of money, and we get a great return on our investment. And I'm pretty sure that's kind of what they're probably going to say.
Yeah. But it doesn't explain the different organizations that have no relation to each other booking the same week. And the other thing, too, is that drives me nuts is they had a 1 year, excuse me, there's something in my eye. There was 1 year, it was like back to back to back, and it was a bed fishing tournament. Like the entire spawn got pounded. It was Champlain.
Mm-hmm.
There was like 5 major tournaments on Champlain back to back, all within
Yeah. Yep.
the same
It was,
4-week period that were all bed fishing.
I remember that. It was like a Toyota, it was like a Bass something federation, and then it was like a Tackle Warehouse, if I was not mistaken, something like that. It was yeah,
It was
back to back to back.
It was a
Was it ML?
invitational Toyota Open.
Oh, Open, okay.
Regional something else.
And this is where I would say, like, it's never cookie cut. It's never like a one size fits all. When you deal with smallmouth in the spawn, especially with gobies, where gobies will raid a smallmouth's nest, and smallmouth are they're very special in the head, and you can throw a flip flop and they'll eat it. You can make an argument to me and say, like, this is why we should limit tournaments during a smallmouth spawn, is because you could wipe them out. You can give me that argument. Does that work for the Potomac? I don't think so. That's a completely different fishery, completely different than Gin Clear Lake Champlain when the whole bay is full of smallmouth, or Lake Erie. Lake Erie really installed that limiting system there for smallmouth because smallmouth are dumb, man. They're really dumb, and you can go through there and wipe them out in a hurry. And I get that argument too. I would like to see if the data says like that does actually help. I'm assuming it does, but again, just because it might work at Lake Erie, I don't think it's going to work necessarily at Smith Mountain Lake or at the Potomac River.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on snakehead? Snakehead affecting bass or the bass?
I don't. From the science and the data that is out there right now, it doesn't look like they affected as much as like the blue cats. The blue cats are like, if you on the Discovery Channel like 10 years ago, there's a thing called pig bomb, and it talked about how Texas and like the South is covered with feral hogs. That's what the blue cats do. How much they breed, and they'll eat anything. They eat grass, by the way. They eat SAV, they eat mussels, they eat everything when they're younger. The snakehead never populate like blue cats do. They're kind of more like muskie in that sense. Like if muskie gets into a fishery, there won't be 10,000 muskie, but you'll see a bunch of pike if pike are in the fishery. It's so interesting, dude. I'm one of the few podcasts that have a ton of snakehead anglers on. The snakehead cult is real. They are a passionate bunch of anglers, and I feel like the more states, again, I think this is cool. The more the states pay and fund to get rid of snakehead, the more the cult grows. Because for every 2 or 3 fishermen that you get that wants to get them out of there, you get 3 or 4 that wants to protect them because they hit a topwater frog, they blow up on anything. And
I caught one today.
Yeah.
This morning, I caught one, and it was a dandy. Let me tell you, it was probably the biggest snakehead I ever caught. And that was actually, what's funny? That was the only one I caught this week. The last time I was here, I probably caught 30 of them.
I think I have an episode actually dropping this week with a Maryland biologist about this. He doesn't necessarily agree with it, but I think they're getting smarter. I think they're getting smarter to the bow fishing pressure, and they know, like in Mattawood and places like that, like, hey, if you go up shallow at night, you're going to get nailed by somebody. And people are starting to catch them in 10, 15 feet of water with live scope. And it's like they're learning where they're going to get hit by anglers and stuff. And I don't know. I want to see more data on, are they affecting bass as much as we think they are, because we are hammering the snot out of them from a recreation standpoint, trying to get them out of the Potomac and the Upper Bay and the Eastern Shore. And bass fishing's kind of stayed the same. Maybe that's due because we're pulling them out of there, but there are more and more people that Yep. Like there's a guy in your comment section right now. I get this in mind. Like, what are the best areas and conditions for snakeheads? Well, snakeheads actually are like dolphin. They breathe air. So if it's windy or choppy, that's why the snakehead fishing is so bad, is they can't breathe necessarily. It's like they have a snorkel and the water goes into their snorkel. So they'll go hide in whatever areas have the least amount of chop. So you want it completely calm, John, completely dead slick calm. And you want some kind of just stagnant water where they can hunt, because they really like to eat minnows and they like to eat bugs and frogs. So that's kind of where you want to look for. And if you want to find a big one, just go there and don't move. And what they'll do is every now and then you'll see them pop some air as they go in to take a big breath before they go back down, and that'll tell you that you got snakehead in the area.
Gotcha. Tim Doobie just joined us. He was guest this past Wednesday on the Road All American, episode number 20. If you guys want, go swing over to Spotify, check that out. Yeah, John. I can't give you any information, so whatever he told you, go with that. The Doobie sneak. Oh man, yeah. All the snakehead I've caught were like by accident. I never targeted them. I do have a buddy who goes bow fishing for them, and he has it's his buddy or his cousin's pontoon. They got it all rigged out with black light and everything. They go night fishing for him. From a bass fishing perspective, I've definitely caught them more around like wood and takedowns and things like that, pitching a jig around or something to that nature. They'll crack a jackhammer, they'll crack a frog,
They'll
for sure.
Truck a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah. If you see like a swirl, and it's weird too, because like that was the thing I kind of like really figured out, like between the different swirls. Like if you see a swirl with like bait fish flickering, and it's like it's more of like a instead of just like a blow up like a bass up on bait, it's like a weird swirl. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah. And the thing is with them, they bite. Their best time to bite, generally speaking, is going to be the absolute dog days of summer, like late July through September, like right September, which was when the bass fishing kind of sucks. So you can really, in the summertime, go out there and just target them. And it's some of the best snakehead fishing when the bass fishing is kind of like on a downturn. And I mean, I guess, again, like, because I go on this on the show with the conservation side of things and also just the fishing side of things. I don't think you're ever going to get snakehead and blue cats out of these places. You're just not. Can you try to limit them? Potentially, yes. But I just think you have to be realistic. Once a goby or once a snakehead or anything gets into your ecosystem, it's hard as heck to try to get them out. So if you're a bass fisherman, always understand where you're coming from that even if you want to have them harvested, which is perfectly fine if that's your deal, it's never going to go to zero. It physically can't, especially with something that breathes oxygen and will go live in parts of a creek that nothing else can live in. It'll just move because it gets too much pressure. I think it's that intelligent. So it makes for a fun game fish, and I'm just hoping it's not the cause for the issues, but based on the weight that's coming out of the Potomac and Upper Bay, so far, knock on wood, it's not causing too much harm.
What's the deal with snakehead? You're supposed to kill them. Is that a rule or law? Regulation?
You can't transport them. So, yeah, if you would like to go to prison, just throw it in your live well and drop it into your local pond. Because at this point, off the top of my head, again, guys, this is not 100%, but just off the top of my head, I think almost every body of water in Virginia now has snakehead allegedly reported in it. It's the same thing with Maryland. And if you go on up towards your neck of the woods, more and more, they're getting relocated by anglers because they want them in there. And once they get in there, you're done-ski. It's really hard to kind of get them out.
Yeah. It's kind of disheartening. I don't like just killing things for no reason.
I agree with that, and that's my problem with like the catfish thing too. Because up in the Upper Potomac where I'm at, people dumped flathead in, which is in the Susquehanna smallmouth country where I live right now. Flathead are a big enemy because flathead, if you guys don't know, have like a mouth like a tiger shark and will eat literally anything. And people want us to kill them on site, like locals, and it's like I can't just gut a catfish and chuck it up on shore. I just can't do that morally. But I get people's anger towards that. I really do. And it just shows you that you don't really want to be transporting things. And I don't know, there's no right answer.
Another issue too, guys, I've seen it happen with a couple fisheries while I was like doing research on the invasive species thing. But doing that, transporting fish from fishery to fishery, even if you want to bring a Florida strain from the James River you caught and dump it in your local pond, they can also bring like parasites and other things that can be catastrophic to a fishery. Don't do it. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't care what you're trying to accomplish. If you're like, oh, well, they're connected, or the rivers, it's like dammed off. Like, no, don't even do that. Like, this is terrible idea. I guess that happened in Connecticut, where at one point while I was doing the research, there was people transported fish from one fishery to another, and there was a terrible like plague that happened amongst the fish. I don't know all the details off my head, but it killed a lot. It caused a fish kill, basically.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with this is the people in your local DNR are not evil, ugly monsters. A lot of them are just biologists that actually love what they do. That's why they got in the career of fish studies. And a lot of them will play ball with, hey, I want to stock the Delaware River. What do I have to do? And you can raise the money, get permitting, and they will help you find a breeder that has good genetics without diseases, and they'll work with you and play ball. So don't feel like you just got to go across the border like you're trying to find and smuggle fentanyl to get smallmouth or largemouth in there. Talk to your state and be like, hey, there's this place I'd really like to kind of help with the genes here. Could we do something? And they're, generally speaking, if you're willing to figure out a way to raise the money, they'll work with you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all the taxes we pay should be be covered.
It is, but it is. I agree, but this is the world we live in. And again, if you want to get involved, again, I keep saying this: go to your HOA meetings with your local small lake. If you want to fix a boat ramp, go do that yourself. If you want to fix a fishery, talk to them about how you can do it. Because as fishermen, I feel like it's just like hunting. Went through this a while ago, especially in Northern Virginia, where Northern Virginia used to be pastures, and I used to hunt, and then it became this sprawling, sub part of DC, and everyone from California and New York moved down here, and you can't hunt anymore. You lost that. Fishing is going to happen to us too. As these houses get more expensive, as it becomes more of an investment for somebody to have this on their portfolio, you're going to lose more and more ability to fish, whether it's at the beach, at a river, or at your local lake. So you really need to get involved to make sure that we keep this kind of right as Americans going forward.
Yeah, the something interesting. Candlewood, that's my home lake, so I'm going to talk about it a lot. They several years ago, we in the Bass Nation, they had there's a member who was in a wheelchair, and he was able to fish, had a boat and everything, and with the fishing outreach program, Joe Kowalski, shout out Joe. I'll see him Tuesday at Congamon for a vet tournament, but he does things with disabled veterans. So they were like really petitioning the state to like, hey, can we please get a normal dock here instead of like having to dunk your boat in, beach it on this muddy bank. Like, let's get a dock. This is ridiculous. This is a state park. Why can't we have a dock? So they had to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on this study about doing a dock. And then he came back and were like, we can't do a dock. That was their ruling. And we're like, why? And they're like, because it's wetlands. It's a lake. Of course it's wet. It's water. Like, these people, like, some people, I'm not going to say this about any other state, just Connecticut. They're morons.
Well, a great counter to that would have been like, so if it's a wetland, why are you allowed to dump herbicide in there?
Well, no, they didn't nuke Candlewood.
It's not Candlewood. Okay.
Candlewood is what they put seven. Dude, this is what we're dealing with here. They paid for a study. The study was based on the depths in which the acreage of the depths in which milfoil grows. So they do a drawdown in the winter. So they went from 4 feet to 16 feet. That's the depths for milfoil in Candlewood. 4 to 16. So the acreage, which is basically a thin strip going like a boat width going around the whole lake. And then you got a couple of flats and stuff. Yeah. But however many acres the lake is, I don't know off the top of my head, it's like astronomical compared to how many acres of milfoil water is, or depth. Like, because you're going on the contour, basically a little contour line strip going around the lake. That's what whatever that acreage is what they were supposed to target with this grass carp program. So they have the acreage for that, and they're like, okay, well, how many carp does that call for? Like, there's like a calculation to determine how many grass carp they put in the fishery or the lake. So they're like, okay, well, it's calling for 312 grass carp. Okay, they're like, well, we don't like that number. We're going to put it in for the total acreage of the lake. And it was 3,500 grass carp is what the entire acreage for the entire lake that milfoil doesn't grow in 80% of it. 3,500 grass carp. And they didn't like the results after the first month, so they decided to put another 3,500 in. So they put 7,000 grass carp when it called for about 300 grass carp.
Well, and the thing with the grass carp too is I have a lot of great guys in the different DVRs I talk to, and I love them, and I'm just 100% not sold on grass carp because unlike spraying, for better or worse of spraying, you spray an area and in general it stays there. Okay, let's assume that's part of the argument's true. The grass carp is a cow that swims. It'll keep eating. And so you put it in this, if I spray this section of the lake, in theory, it's this section. But if I dump the grass carp in this section, he'll eat this section and then just swim over there and keep eating. So it's better, I guess, because you're not dumping cancer into your body of water, but it will do a much better job of eating grass. And the other thing is this too, they'll eat lily pads and water willow. They'll eat anything and everything. They just will. It's not just grass that they'll eat.
I have on GoPro in a tournament. I was doing one of the veterans, where volunteer, take veteran fishing, a little tournament deal. During that tournament on Candlewood, I see a branch bobbing in the water. Like, the hell? So I'm thinking, in my head, I'm like, the only logical explanation of this branch bobbing in the water is somebody got hung up in the tree and their bait was like dangling and a fish came along and ate it, and the line is still in the tree, so the fish is hooked. So I'm like, let me go inspect this. So I kick up the trolling motor, I start pussing over there. Sure as hell, it was like just an overhanging branch, and the grass carp were eating the leaves off the tree. Because there's no grass, there's not a strand of grass in the entire lake. It's gone. It's desolate. It's completely barren. You would think Chernobyl. Like,
yeah.
It's
I am
Michael Scott, threat level midnight.
It's true though. Like, again, like, so I'm not 100% sold on the studies with grass carp, and they turn up the water too, which makes it that weird color. Any carp does that in general. Catfish will do this too, where they root and they'll turn everything up, which means the sunlight can't get to the bottom, and it creates a whole other slew of issues. And this is where somebody's like, "Oh, Tom, you just want the lake just to be 100% grass." It's like, I get, like, in some places you do need to manage it. I think having a harvesting machine, pellets, things like that are really, really important to manage the lake. It comes down to healthy communication and not nuking the whole place, and figuring out different areas that are allowed to somehow be left. And something that was brought up in a show that I did, where if you were 100% against grass, do a drawdown of these older lakes for 2 or 3 years, like what happened, I think it was at Cumberland Lake, so that brush and grasses can grow around the edges again, and then flood it. And then you can fix a lake that way too. But homeowners won't do that, because then you're not going to have water on their dock for 2 or 3 years. But that would solve the issue. You won't have grass, but you'll have a ton of brush and shallow cover that will allow for great spawning habitat and a place for minnows and things to be at. But when you have these lakes that are going on, like Kerr Reservoir was built around World War II. I think it was 1945. That's getting, over 100 years plus old. Like, there's not a lot of wood and stuff left in these fisheries. They need something. And I'm sorry, dumping every Christmas tree for the last 30 years isn't going to do it. You need something else, and it has to be alive, whether it was a tree, a shrub, or SAV.
Yeah, that's the deal with Candlewood. How they came up with the 4 to 16 foot range was because they do a drawdown that's about 4 feet, and Like you have a distinct inside weed line, so the consistency of drawing down every year really did the trick for that inside weed line, which gives. That's why it's like you guys don't have any grass around your dock. What's the problem?
Yeah.
Like why are we talking about this? Like this is even up for, and a lot of the homeowners on Candlewood and the Lake Association were against chemicals, and that was why they opted for carbon. But then once the state got involved, our state is just a debacle. It politically, bureaucratically, whatever you want to call it, with the like one of the previous governors like gutted the main department that handles this. It went from like 200 or something employees to 2. So this is what we got. And then like from the trout aspect, they gutted that department. They were going to get rid of the fisheries division, not the fisheries division, the hatcheries division entirely. And then they like the trout fishermen were like, okay, well, what if we advocate for a tax, and then that tax can pay for the hatcheries to keep it open? And they're like, oh, well, okay, let's put together a tax, and we'll have a stamp basically. So when you get your permit, you have to get a stamp for it.
Yeah.
So they implemented $5 trout stamp. What they do with that? That goes right in the general fund. They don't see a penny of it. They're like, no, we get it. The hatcheries get some of it. No, because you would have a great program. Everybody paying the stamp, and then they did a saltwater license. Saltwater licenses. Connecticut doesn't own the Atlantic Ocean. Like, I don't know. And like I said in the other podcast, I was like, if you're not happy with the way your state, especially Connecticut, because I could care less, they ticked me off so much over the years. If you're not happy with it, band together and don't buy a license. Like I'm going hard, banging a hard right here because
show up. I mean, again, like I can't say this enough. And this was the same thing when people didn't like what was being taught to their kids across the United States. It was because people actually started to show up to those meetings for their kids. Everyone started to do that. Everyone started to go to the meetings that counted. Before, when no one shows up, they're allowed to do whatever they want.
But
you show up.
There's no, like in my state, there's no meetings. There's no nothing. Like
yours is a special case. I'm just saying everybody else
is like the land of misfit toys from Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like it's the way the DEP, and it's the electric, like it's the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. It's like all DEP really cares about is like what's going on with like the power grid. Like that's it. It's mind-boggling. But it's in conjunction because Connecticut First Light Power controls the dams. They generate electricity with water flow between fisheries or the lakes on the Housatonic River. So I guess there's like coinciding between the way they structured it, but it doesn't make sense. Like we don't have a DNR. Like if we had a DNR, I talked to the Maryland DNR a while back when Connecticut was trying to pass some stupid bass action plan that made no sense. Doing slot limits and spawn fishing only on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Like it was the most asinine thing I've ever read in my life. Google it. If you're watching this, Google Connecticut State Bass Action Plan and read it and tell me it's not damn near insanity. But I had called Maryland and we were talking. I was just interested on like Chickamuxin, and I believe there's another one. I forgot where it is. Where they have a no fish zone, like a spawning area. Like I think it's
Chick and Mattawoman, but I know it's Chick for sure, and it might be Mattawoman if I'm not mistaken.
He said that the Chickamuxin one is like null and void. Like that's not even active anymore. Like it's not like whatever the time limit was for like don't fish there anymore. Like that's expired. Like you could go and fish there if you want, type of thing. But it's still like considered off limits in the tournament aspect. I was like, that's interesting. And I was like, was it successful? And he was like, yeah, believe it was, but you know, I think that's a great way to have a like kind of limited spawn. That was why I presented it to the state when I was like, hey, look, like Candlewood, something like that. Because a lot of people are against bent fishing ethically, and then there's other guys that are against it because it hurts the fishery, they believe. So why don't we do something like this, like copy Maryland and take a designated area of the lake and just be like, it's off limits during the spawn. Like give it the 2 months or a month and a half or whatever, 6 weeks is off limits, can't fish there. You're like, well, we'd have to pay somebody to police it, and we don't have the officers to do it. I'm like, it'll police itself. We're fishermen. If we're competing for money,
Yeah.
and I see somebody fishing it, I'm gonna protest them, or somebody's gonna
Yeah.
protest me if I was fishing. Yeah, I'm not gonna do it.
And the biggest thing I have to always say is it always should be a body of water by body of water basis. Like the one thing I'll say, because I was in the meetings when they talked about that, the Potomac River has so many spawning flats on it. It's not like some places where, let's say the Upper Bay. I'm just hypothetical. People that fish the Upper Bay, don't kill me here. But let's say the flats was just the only place they ever spawned. Well, if that was the case, it would make sense to put in some kind of tournament ban, because if it's literally just this area that they can spawn in, that's good habitat. If you have lakes like that, like maybe let's say Candlewood is like that, I could hear that argument more. But if you're a lake that is Toledo Bend or the Potomac, where you have all of these areas they can spawn in, usually the tournaments is just not going to get to them. Unless it's a smallmouth event where they all are just so stupid and you could just rip them off the nest left and right. Which with largemouth, really they're not like that.
Hey, it's 7:30. I want to hit you with 2 questions, and before we get out of here, if you're cool with that,
Go for it.
All right. First question is actually, hold on. John Hamilton asks, any tips for bass fishing in shallow grassy area? Fish along Pohick and Belmont. Throw a frog.
And choose your tide. If you're at the bank, if you're bank bound and you're going an absolute low tide, it's going to be really a struggle bus. I would say fish like a higher tide if you're fishing from the bank, because you're going to have more water to deal with. But know your tide, and that'll make it a lot easier for your bait choices.
All right, so your 2 questions. You desert island bait that you've been throwing the past couple of years, like guaranteed to go catch them. Go.
Oh, easily. It's going to be a fluke type of bait. I was throwing. Let me see, where are they? I was throwing this bait right here, and it's funny because I was pre-fishing for a tournament 2 weekends ago, and it's called Lake Mooney. And so I was using forward-facing sonar with this bait here with a heavy jig head, doing the whole jigging minnow thing and catching them. And I took this exact same bait and went down and caught flounder and redfish and speckled trout with a little bit lighter head. And I was bounced between this and like the Berkeley Gulp version. Dude, a fluke, you can do anything. You can go top water, you can go weedless, you can do the jigging minnow stuff. It doesn't matter the brand. I really didn't realize until I went saltwater fishing again, like besides fishing's fun, it doesn't have to be vast, but there's some baits that will just literally catch anything in the water. And you can switch the sizes up. Go to like the 1-inch style fluke, and you can go crappie to bluegill fishing. You can go up to the 9-inch for when they're schooling on like Lake Murray down in the South Carolinas and just rip it overhead. The biggest thing you're adjusting is just the way that you rig this bad boy. I've had fun with this when they go off a frog, putting this on a screw lock hook over the mats and then letting it die in the holes. Like for sometimes, man, they don't want it just to sit there when it breaks away from the mat. They want it to flutter down. So you can have a lot of good fun with a fluke style bait.
All right. Fluke. Mine, I would make a suggestion of go-to bait to put fish in the boat. Bladed jig.
Yeah, can't go wrong with that.
We have this, that's basically part of the podcast. I get asked a lot what bait to throw, this, that, and other things. So I kind of made it a topic. You know, you recommend a fluke style bait. I recommend a bladed jig. It's for the working man, works 60 hours a week, has 3 kids, doesn't have time to get out on the water. He wants something that's productive that'll make the little time he does have valuable.
What
Next
color?
question. What happened?
What color are you going with? Are you going more with a white? Are you going with a red bladed? Like, what color would you tell them to get?
Probably tidal. I'd go black and blue, and non-tidal, some type of green pumpkin. I prefer like
I need to throw that.
a bluegill pattern because it matches perch, and I want to catch big fish. And if you're catching if you see there's big perch in the fishery, I want to catch the largemouth that are eating those perch. So I want to imitate a bigger profile, use a bigger trailer, like 4.3, 3.8, paddle tail swim bait on the back. Sometimes I'll cut the tail off so it gives it a little more fishy of an action. But yeah, like some type of bluegill or perch pattern, like green pumpkin with orange in it, a little yellow. No chartreuse really. I like there's a color from Kitech.
Sexy shad?
No, it's a perchy color. It's not. They have a perch and they have a male perch, but it's neither of those. Those are both good. Sungill.
Oh.
That's the color I like. There's a lot of yellow and orange. So that with like a green pumpkin, you get like the half and half. It's kind of because the belly consists of the Kitech and then the skirt. There's a lot of green pumpkin into it, so you get like I don't know. It works. It puts fish in the boat, and you get big bites on it. You might not get a lot of bites because you're targeting bigger fish. So bigger fish are harder to catch. Therefore, you have to put time in. But those would be the colors that I'd pick. Next question for you. What's your favorite fish to eat? And you got any secret recipes you want to share?
Oh, my goodness. So this is going to be a little biased because I just got back from Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, where we had some of the best tacos ever, which was, I believe they were mahi-mahi tacos, which were awesome. But I would say probably flounder or snakehead, honestly. Like flounder is so good with like stuff like blue crab. Oh my gosh, that's really good. Or I'm going to have to say like snakehead tacos, Baja tacos are just amazing. You can't go wrong with tacos, guys. Come on. Like it's easy. You can impress your girlfriend or your wife so easily if you came home with either like flounder. If you can't get snakehead, get yourself some mahi-mahi, any white fish you want. Put any kind of taco seasoning on that bad boy. Get yourself some fresh tortillas. Get yourself fresh cilantro, some salsa. That's it, and a Corona with a lime. If the fresh ingredients is what makes it good, so you don't need a lot of ingredients, okay? And I'm telling you, you could just be a Neanderthal and only eats Hot Pockets. You're gonna look like a gourmet chef to your significant other if you just get those ingredients and you wine and dine her with that. I promise you.
I can't hit the heart on posting the podcast. I was gonna be like that was good. No, there's something I've been making lately is shrimp scampi. I was on like a shrimp scampi kick. It's not my favorite seafood to eat, but it was a seasoning. Never really used it up until like recently. Coriander.
Coriander's good, yeah.
So I'll steam or boil the shrimp depending the situation. Like if I get like a bag of frozen shrimp or something, or I had a lot of fresh shrimp and I like want to repurpose them. Like say I did shrimp cocktail and I want to switch to like, hey, I have like 10 left over or whatever. So, but coriander, just a little bit, and then lemon and butter, like very simple, and mix that in with the pasta, a little olive oil, good to go. But add whenever you cook shrimp, try it with just coriander, maybe some pepper if you want. I don't know. It's just different, subtle.
Yeah.
Like doesn't overpower anything. It's just like a subtle little hint, something.
And shrimp are clutch. I know I married a Marylander, so I'll say this. Hopefully, she's not listening. I don't get the fascination with crab because it is so. I don't want to burn calories to eat the food, but when you're dealing with crabs, it takes more energy just to get it out than it is to eat it. It tastes okay, but dude, shrimp, power move. You can get them frozen. They taste just as good when you put them on whatever surface you're going to cook them on. So that is a really good call.
Yeah. You know what else is good too? Not snow crab, the king crab legs.
Those are banging. Those are really good.
Yeah. I like king crab legs. That's good. You know what's weird? It's gonna sound crazy, but growing up, because my dad's originally from Maryland, um, so I have Maryland in my blood. I grew up eating crabs, blue crabs all the time. You get like a bushel, half a bushel, whatever, steam them, pick crabs, and then whatever's left over, crab soup for a couple days. You know,
She crab soup good.
the
Yeah.
but as I got older, it's like I just do crab cakes.
Dude, yeah, crab cakes, again, stuffed crab meat and with a fish is really good. And I'm telling you, there's so many saltwater fish, man, like trout, speckled trout, man. They taste really good too. I had cobia last year. Some friends brought them back up from fishing Virginia Beach area. Oof, man, a cobia steak on the grill with a Corona is just you can't again, guys, like all bass fishermen, I'm gonna say, like when you get stressed out about the forward facing center thing, go touch some grass, go out into the bay and just go have fun, because there's so many cool fish species around the Chesapeake Bay area you can go chase, and you don't have to yell about forward facing center or any of this other trouble.
That's for sure. I haven't gone like I probably haven't. It's probably been 2 years since I went surf fishing. Like that was one of my favorite things in life, was surf fishing. Even if I got skunked, just go out, waders, or walk out on a jetty and throw a big plug. You know,
oh, that sounds like fun.
Just like randomly, like, and especially like in Long Island Sound, where I'm at on the shoreline in Connecticut, it's like you go out there, probably spend like 3-4 hours, maybe only get one bite, but it's gonna be like a 40-pound striper, 15-plus-pound bluefish.
I bet they truck a plug too when they hit it.
Dude, I I had caught I have a 42-pound striper mounted skin graft, right? That was the biggest one I caught at that point in time. I was probably 19, 20 when I caught that one. 41 now. The I don't know, probably like 8-10 years after I caught that one, me and my buddy were fishing, and I laid into a giant striper, reeling him in. Like halfway, line goes slack. I'm like, what the hell's going on now? I got dead weight, so I don't know what the hell happened. So I'm reeling in. I reel in half striper. He got bit in half in the Hoostonk River by a shark. This is like a common thing now. Like it's way more common now than
it's insane. There's too many sharks, man.
So, but when it happened, it was like a fish story. I kept the fish, made a bunch of fillets out of what I had left.
Mm-hmm.
It was like right behind the dorsal fin, so like the whole tail end got bit off. But the head on this striper is double the size
Good
of
Lord.
the 42-pounder I caught.
Is it up in your area? I saw this. I think it was like in a newspaper. These people put wetsuits on and like float in the ocean with a rod, like to catch striper. Like apparently it's a New England like northern thing to do. Is you get out there and you wade as deep as you can into the surf.
I'll go on waders. There's guys that's like been forever. They don't float, but they go out float. That's
I couldn't do that.
No, there's guys that do
like they're a topwater. They're just floating there in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah, for sure. No.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, hell no. The I'll go out on waders. I've done that. But the problem with waders is like where you want to. I certain places where you want to go wade out, like one step and you're off a cliff. Like
really,
it's into some type of channel or where it just drops off, and if your waders full of water, you're done. If I do waders, I'm not going out like crazy deep, and I'm not doing it like it's something like very specific, like this area of this river or this area of this beach. Like I'm not just doing it all the time anywhere I can. Just because you can do it, doesn't mean it's practical. I'd rather go out on a jetty. But they do have some cool stuff. They have like detachable booties on some of these waders, so you can have like kind of like a half wetsuit, half wader type of thing going on.
tech for the inshore fishing, like when I was at ICAST like a year ago, like some of the stuff they're getting for like inshore fishing is pretty awesome. Like the drones that are like, I mean, they're probably the same drones that are in Ukraine right now, where you can take your shark bait out about like 10 feet and watch it on a camera and drop it from the drone. Like it's crazy how much the tech is not just affecting the bass fishing world, but also like the saltwater fishing world as well.
Dude, not for nothing. Long Island Sound. If you just like going out, like tug is a drug type of deal. If you just like going out fun fishing, there's a species of fish. They have these big wings. They're called sea robins, and they bark. Like when you pull them out of the water, they have like a barking
Oh,
noise
that's
to them.
cool.
They're weird. But guys look at them as junk fish because they're going out for stripers. They might be chunking bunker or something. But those fish, if you go out to your beach and you know there's a lot of sea robins around, chances there are, go out there instead of bringing big saltwater 10-foot rods, big saltwater gear. Go out there with bass fishing gear and go fishing for sea robins. You'll have a blast because you catch like 30 of them. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, they're awesome. You just throw repurpose your old Kitex or your old jig heads. Just go out in the Long Island Sound, fish for sea robins.
That would be cool. Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, it was great having you on episode 21. Everybody watching, make sure you check out Fishing the DMV podcast as well, and Basscast Live. When are you guys doing the next Basscast Live?
So Basscast, I think all episodes drop for Basscast on Thursdays. Fishing the DMV, I'm actually coming back up the road. I'm in my travel studio right now tomorrow. So we will have Monday Night Live for Fishing the DMV on Monday. And then I'm only going to be dropping 2 extra episodes this week. One is with a guy that runs the Eastern Shore of Maryland. So we're going to be talking about bass fishing and snakeheads on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And then the other big news is we talked about it. Casting for Conservation is the 501c nonprofit I am creating. That's going live next year. So we can actually start looking at boat docks that we can actually fix up and clean up that really need some love. And also we can do supplemental fish stockings. That's coming in 2025. If you want to, you can go check that out. But we're going to try to do our part to help out our area.
Awesome. You got any sponsors or anything that you want to shout out, or anybody
Nope.
in particular?
It's my Patreon. Honestly, sponsorship is really, really hard here. I have a little bit of help from Jake's Bait and Tackle, Shallow Water Fishing Adventure, but honestly, it is my Patreon supporters. If it wasn't for you guys, I couldn't do this. And it's because of the Patreons that we're even going to be able to do this nonprofit to actually start helping out our local fishery. So huge shout out to everyone on Patreon that supports me.
All right, drop the link. What's the link?
Just go on to Patreon, type in Fishing the DMV, and you can find it.
I'll put his link in the description for this video, so anybody who wants to support can do so. And thanks again, brother. I appreciate having you on, and I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, boss. See you
All right,
guys.
brother. Have a good night.